Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar Energy Storage Outlook, Progress, Challenges, and the Road Ahead, hosted by the New York Battery Energy Storage Technology Consortium. We'd like to thank our sponsors, NYSERDA, RG&E, and NYSEG for their support on this project. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and I just wanted to run through a few webinar items. Questions you can enter at any time during the webinar in the text box supplied on your screen. We will be reviewing these questions and they will be answered at the end of the webinar. We will try to get to as many as possible. Please note that your phones are already muted. There is a survey at the end of the webinar, and we would appreciate you taking the time to supply your feedback. There is a recording of this webinar taking place, and if you are interested in receiving it, please email info@ny-best.org. Today's presenters include Dr. William Acker. He is a well-known and highly regarded scientist and entrepreneur in the field of energy. He currently serves as the first executive director of NYBEST. He is a serial entrepreneur who has been instrumental in the founding of several energy-related businesses, including Optowind Corporation, MTI Microfuel Cells, and Taconic Energy. He serves on the board of the Center for Future Energy Systems at RPI and Cornell, and recently has appointed as a commissioner to the New York Ready Commission by Governor Cuomo. He is dedicated to promoting energy technology and the energy industry in New York. We also have John Cerveny, who is the Director of Resource Development for NYBEST, where he leads efforts to make connections between and among members, funding opportunities, and the community at large. Prior to this position, he was founder and president of New York Energy Resources, located in Schenectady, and a senior advisor for Tech City in Kingston. John previously held senior business development and government relations positions at a number of leading clean tech companies, including Plug Power, GE Microgen, MTI Microfuel Cells. And also, Denise Sheehan serves as a senior consultant to NYBEST, providing management, strategic planning, and policy assistance. She brings 24 years of experience in the government and nonprofit sectors. Most recently, she serves as the executive director of the Climate Registry, an international nonprofit membership organization. Denise previously served for 10 years at the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, including 2 years as commissioner. She also served for 10 years at the New York State Division of the Budget, handling primarily environment and energy issues. I will now hand it over to Dr. William Acker.
Thank you, Alyssa. In today's webinar, we will be reviewing the year 2012, talking about the major developments in energy storage industry and the key initiatives impacting the industry occurring in New York State. We'll also highlight the accomplishments and activities of NYBEST in supporting the industry. Following that first portion of the webinar, we will then look ahead to 2013. 2013 proves to be a very exciting year for energy storage, and we'll look at the opportunities and challenges and how the industry will be going forward in 2013. And again, following the similar format, we'll look at the initiatives in New York State that can help advance the industry and priorities for NYBEST in advancing those initiatives and other activities for advancing the energy storage industry. So, looking at 2012, there was a lot of activity over the year that caused great impact to the energy storage industry going forward. And so I want to begin with the electricity grid section of the energy storage industry, and particularly drivers for redesign of the grid and reliability. We saw significant drivers for redesign coming out of both natural power outages that came from natural disasters and also from man-made or reliability outages. If you look at this chart, shows a map of India, one of the largest power outages ever, affecting 600 million people, showing some of the issues associated with reliability on the electricity grid. Additionally, of course, we saw some severe natural disasters, tsunami in Japan, Hurricane Sandy in the northeast United States. The picture on the lower left shows Manhattan, power outage associated with Hurricane Sandy. In addition to the drivers from these traumatic events, I think there's also a recognition by many countries, particularly in the U.S., of the age of our electricity infrastructure. We understand that our electricity infrastructure is quite old and that we're going to have to spend quite a bit of money to upgrade it over the next few years. And so we're faced with a situation where we're going to have to invest quite a bit into our electricity infrastructure, and in doing so, we really should take the opportunity to create a better infrastructure, to create something that has more resiliency, to create something that can address the issues that I just spoke about. So this is a backdrop that bodes well for 2013, looking at advances in the electricity infrastructure that would incorporate energy storage. A second major driver is renewable penetration. Increasing renewables add to the balancing needs of the electricity grid, and we're continuing to see growth in the renewables industry. Last year, we continued to see advancements in both wind and solar industry. We are seeing a temporary drop in wind power associated in the U.S., associated primarily with the gap in the renewal of the PCT tax credit. Fortunately, that tax credit was reauthorized, and so we expect to see continued growth in the renewable sector. We are continuing to see installations of energy storage equipment and devices. We're seeing a lot of activity of installations behind the meter in buildings driven by demand charges. We're also seeing some large projects beyond the existing projects in New York. We're seeing projects of CAISO, ERCOT, PJM. And I think what's interesting here also is that we're seeing many new technologies. We're starting to see a whole array of different battery chemistries beginning to be deployed on the electricity grid. We're also beginning to see fuel cells have traction, particularly larger systems in Korea. We're seeing hydrogen storage gaining traction in Europe. We're seeing ultracapacitors coming online in certain applications. We're also seeing some traditional energy storage like compressed air and thermal storage coming online. So we're seeing a wide array of new technologies being deployed in this industry. Lastly, regulations are beginning to recognize, the regulators are beginning to recognize the value and importance of energy storage. And we saw one important step in that regard over 2012 with FERC 755 being implemented. FERC 755 is pay for performance for frequency regulation services that allows energy storage, because it's a faster responding asset, to realize the value it's creating. Now, beyond the electricity grid, we're also seeing a lot of excitement in the transportation sector. EV sales, pure EV sales, have been below targets in 2012 in general. However, they're still growing quite rapidly. And we're seeing a broad expansion of the types and numbers of models. Microhybrids, meaning device cars that have larger battery systems or ultracapacitor systems on board for start-stop technology, are becoming pervasive. We're seeing a large expansion of the offerings of hybrids, plug-in hybrids, range-extended electric vehicles, and then pure electric vehicles, sometimes referred to in the industry as XEV, to cover this whole swath of different technologies. You no longer have a situation where each car company is offering one model that might be a hybrid or electric vehicle. If you go to Ford's website, for instance, you'll see a whole suite of electric vehicle offerings. And this is, I think, an important maturing of the industry. We've also seen over the past year major alliances been announced for fuel cell vehicles that bode well for the future deployment of fuel cell vehicles around the world. Lastly, in the transportation sector, we're seeing an increased focus on infrastructure. And an important aspect of that is fast charge technology. The bringing forward of fast charge technology that allow electric vehicles to charge to a reasonable percentage of charge in 10, 20 minutes is very important in addressing range anxiety and addressing the needs for electric vehicles to be able to be more pervasive in the marketplace. companies are beginning to bring forward strategic plans to deploy charging networks, and the business models for these charging networks are evolving. Frequently, the business model still is to give away the power, and many of the car companies are starting to look at deploying charging networks as a feature that would deploy more vehicles, and that's going to be important to see how that shakes out as we go forward. So, lastly, in the review of 2012 category, we did see a number of industry challenges this year, and some of that relates to the rate of market growth and the financial stability of startups trying to penetrate those marketplaces. We have seen a couple of high-profile bankruptcies, A123 and Beacon Power among them. Interestingly, both of those companies emerged from bankruptcy, and their technologies are being used and their products are being deployed. In fact, the Beacon plant that's only about 30 miles from where we're doing this webinar today continued to provide services throughout the entire transition. We're seeing an expansion of system applications that requires more emphasis on system design. On the electricity grid, we're seeing we have a challenge around the realization of multiple benefits and value streams, how you monetize those multiple value streams. That doesn't mean that energy storage products aren't deployable today profitably, but it does cause challenges in the wide-scale deployment and realizing the full market that need to be addressed through regulatory action and other actions. Lastly, we've seen high-profile discussions of safety in the industry and the need for sufficient testing. An important aspect of this is full system testing. Many of the failures we've seen have been associated with electronics, the inverter, the battery management systems, and around multi-cell systems. So the need to test at full systems, and the need to test and address system design in an application-specific way. Load profiles are different, cold temperatures, environmental differences of different system applications are important. And one example of that is obviously the safety and performance of a battery is very different at exceptionally cold temperature than at higher temperatures. Crystallization, dendrite growth, other mechanisms happen that require focus on the particular application the battery will be in. So this is a driver that we're seeing for the industry to do life testing, accelerated aging testing, failure mode and effect analysis testing on full systems. With that said, 2012 was a productive year for energy storage, and we're very excited about moving to 2013. I'm going to turn it over to Denise now to talk about the developments in New York State.
Thanks, Bill. As Bill just described, the energy storage industry is rapidly evolving and certainly growing, and the developments in industry are certainly influencing government policies and programs. And likewise, government is seeking to harness the benefits associated with energy storage, including energy security, resiliency, economic growth, and environmental benefits. So for this part of the webinar, I'm going to just highlight a few of the major initiatives undertaken in New York State in 2012 that are important to the energy storage industry. In the interest of time, we're just going to focus on some of the major high points. There may be items that are important to you or regulations or issues that I don't touch upon, but for the sake of discussion, we were going to keep it high level. So first really is the Energy Highway Initiative and the Energy Highway Blueprint. In New York State, Governor Cuomo kicked off this initiative with his State of the State in 2012. This is a public-private initiative essentially to rebuild the state's electric power system. It was noted actually through this process that more than 40% of New York's power generating capacity is over 40 years old, and more than 20% of it is over 50 years old. So it was a process that sought input from industry and from stakeholders, resulting in 85 responses with 130 ideas. NYBEST participated in this effort, and thank you to our members who provided comments. So our voice was heard through this process. The blueprint outlines 13 recommended actions in 4 different focus areas, essentially focused on system reliability and efficiency, minimizing environmental impacts, and generating long-term customer benefits. Notable for energy storage was the blueprint's recommendations around supporting clean energy and driving technology innovation, specifically smart grid, distributed generation, including energy storage. So, and the past year, in relation to the Energy Highway, this December, the New York Power Authority announced $726 million in terms of investment in upgrading its transmission system, as well as another $250 million was announced for smart grid technologies. So things are already underway. It's estimated that the actions in the blueprint will result in $5.7 billion in public and private investment over the next 5 to 10 years, which is also expected to produce, obviously, a significant number of new jobs. The other thing, one of the other items in 2012 relates to the State Energy Plan. The update to the 2009 State Energy Plan is underway, and again, NYBEST provided a lot of comment and input into this process. The Energy Plan is expected in March of 2013. We are expecting that energy storage will have a central point or a central focus of that energy plan. Also in 2012 was the developments following Hurricane Sandy. There were 4 different commissions that were created by Governor Cuomo right after Hurricane Sandy. The first one was a Moreland Commission that was established to investigate utility response to the storm. And then 3 new commissions were established to look at different elements of our readiness and our ability to respond to major storms and major events like Hurricane Sandy. NYBEST and Bill Acker, our own Bill Acker in particular, was invited and appointed to the READY Commission. And many of you, our NYBEST members, provided substantial input and information to us through that process. The recommendations from these commissions are reflected in the Governor's State of the State address and as well as other interim reports, which we'll get into as we do the outlook for 2013. Another major thing that occurred in 2012 is here in New York and New York's emphasis on this industry is reflected through funding for energy storage, New York and clean energy in particular. NYSERDA invests $1 billion a year in clean energy through a variety of programs, and energy storage is part of that. Many of our members receive funding through these programs, whether it's the SBC or the Renewable Portfolio Standard or through NYBEST funding. But it does represent a substantial commitment from the state of New York towards clean energy. Also, through our economic development efforts here in New York, several different projects have been funded through the Regional Economic Development Council process. In the past year alone, $14.4 million was provided to 12 different NYBEST members in 2012 for their specific energy storage projects. So again, the commitment from the state at both the policy level as well as the funding level was very strong in 2012. So with that, I'm going to hand it to John, who's going to talk a little bit more about industry developments in New York.
Great. Thank you, Denise. As Denise just outlined, New York State did their part in the past year to really help advance and create even better opportunities for energy storage. What I'm going to talk about now are some of the things that went on the industry side. Certainly the companies in New York State of their own took actions and made significant accomplishments and strides in growing the energy storage industry and our impact in the state. In particular, I just wanted to highlight a few accomplishments. Oops, there we go. Across the categories that you see listed here, in the areas of technology advancements, investments, partnerships, and ultimately sales of products. In each of these, you can point to numerous examples from across the state and every part of the state where there have been achievements and accomplishments. if you're a regular reader and you receive the New York Best newsletter, one of the areas that's always highlighted is the New York Best members in the news. And so if you were to take a year's worth of those and go through them, you'd find literally dozens of articles, headlines that would lead you to articles describing achievements in these categories. You can look at technical advancements. Primet made advancements in materials for batteries. Other organizations similarly. In investments, GE probably made the biggest news this year with an additional investment in their new battery plant in Schenectady, an additional $70 million investment on top of what was already a $100 million investment, and the jobs that will go with that. Investments were also made in a number of companies. I won't go into detail on all the examples, but the point is, if you look at the level of activity in the state, it's at a high level and it's increasing. One of the things that we did to really get our arms around this, at the same time that the energy storage roadmap was inaugurated, we engaged ECG Consulting to perform an economic impact study. The net result of that study, which Bill will talk about shortly, really pointed to the level of, helped us quantify the level of activity in the state and understand where we stand on our path to growing this industry. It effectively established a baseline, and now having that in hand, we can do additional studies in the future and surveys of industry that will allow us to really plot the course and know how we're doing. We felt that was an important element of understanding where we're going to get to, was to know where we start. So now I turn it to Bill for more information on New York State progress.
Thank you, John. So 2012 was a good year for New York Best, and we're going to talk about some of the particular accomplishments in the next couple slides, and then roll into 2013. To begin with, New York Best worked very closely with New York State and provided suggestions on the energy plan, the state energy plan, the energy highway roadmap, and the commissions on preparedness, as Denise had talked about. And I think it's important that not only was New York Best's voice heard, but our members' voices were heard. So we acted as a conduit to collect information from all of our members, and also to speak for the industry as a whole. And we're able to be impactful in all three of these areas that you'll see in some of the 2013 pieces coming out of it. As John indicated, we did commission an economic impact study for the energy storage industry last year with ECG Consulting Group. That study, as he also indicated, created baseline data. It created projections by sector for the economic impact in the state and the growth in the state. And this chart is showing the really substantial opportunity that New York State has in energy storage. If you look at the highlighted lines, and this is for the base case in the ECG study, you'll see that the revenue projections for the industry by 2030 are over $8 billion and about 29,000 jobs created in the energy storage industry. And that's the base case. In the optimistic case, where we assume greater activity both by the industry and also by the state in attracting key industry players and incentivizing those that are here, their projections grow even further to $14 billion of revenue and 45,000 jobs by 2013. And this is an important study because this is exactly the type of thing that the state needs to understand. And I think they did understand it to the standpoint of creating New York, helping to create New York Best in the first place, but to understand in order to catalyze the decisions around the economic development funding that the state's now deploying in our area. So over the past 2 years with the Regional Economic Development councils. We have impacted and influenced the strategic plans of those councils, that more than half of them have energy storage as a key aspect of their strategic plan, and that's really been one of the drivers behind the funding that our members have received in economic development funding. If I move to the next area is the energy storage roadmap for New York State. And it's important that our industry can set goals and can set strategies to meet those goals. And it's important that the entire industry weighs in on making that happen. And that's exactly what this energy storage roadmap is all about. We involve more than 50 experts from our member base in the creation of this document. It develops 10-year goals for our industry, and it develops action plans and a path of action that is really a guideline for what we're doing in 2013 that we'll talk about. Moving forward to the last area I'll talk about before turning it back over to John is the Commercialization Center. I spoke earlier about the need for testing. We are in a unique position to be able to provide resources that the industry needs, that catalyzes the growth of our membership and helps to grow the industry here in New York State. And that's through providing testing opportunities, particularly capabilities, particularly around larger systems. So the New York Best Commercialization Center will test from single cells all the way up to 1 megawatt systems. It will provide environmental capabilities for testing in different environmental conditions, and really is a focal point for growth of the industry. The project has received great support from the Finger Lakes Regional Development Council, being a lead project, directly from Governor Cuomo and Senator Gillibrand, and a whole array of state and local officials have been great in making this happen. We've, over the year 2012, detailed test equipment, executed funding with Empire State Development Corporation, and secured private partnerships to cost-share NYSERDA funding in order to launch the center. Beyond the initial work of the center in testing, we are also going to be expanding to doing other kinds of testing beyond performance in life and pilot manufacturing and prototyping. This shows some of the equipment at Eastern Business Park, which is a great resource to the center that will be deployed. So with that said, we'll now move to other activities that New York Best did in 2012, and I'll pass it back to John.
Great. Thanks, Bill. So other accomplishments and things that we view as highlights of 2012 as an organization, certainly when you look at the funding opportunities that we're able to participate in and help our members achieve success, that is at the top of our list in many ways. A majority of New York Best's funding, the initial funding that New York Best received from New York State is actually programmed to be put out in the form of research grants through NYSERDA. That's about $13 million in total. In 2012, about $5.4 million of that was made available through PON 2458, which was the New York Best Bench to Prototype solicitation. 8 awards that totaled $2 million were announced in October, and a second round of awards will be announced shortly. The next due date under that PON, just if you're interested, is May 13th, and there's still funding available. Numerous other PONs from NYSERDA provided support to dozens of New York Best companies in the area of clean energy, smart grid, industrial process efficiency, and transportation technologies. Funding assistance from New York Best in total has now touched about 40 companies through grants at NYSERDA. Total of over 30 R&D partnerships and early stage companies were formed, supported, and received mentoring from New York Best in 2012. Big part of time, or a big chunk of time that Bill and I spend is in direct conversation with members and helping them to identify their needs and move the ball forward. Another big part of the role of New York Best is our conferences and webinars. In 2012, we held 5 conferences, and additional, we launched our first webinars. We had 5 webinars in 2012. In combination, over 800 people participated in those activities, and we feel it's a central piece to how we make connections. People around the table and on the phone are a good way to share information. We do twice a month a newsletter, both a member newsletter and a non-member newsletter, and then occasional and as appropriate we do other e-communications, funding opportunity alerts, news alerts when there's major breaking news in the state, and also calls for participation in some of the activities that you heard Denise talk about. It's sometimes really important for us to get timely input from members, so we appreciate it when you watch your mailbox and respond appropriately. Finally, just touch on New York Best members received not only the NYSERDA funding that we heard about, that I just talked about, but also numerous federal sources, ARPA-E, DOE directly, the National Science Foundation have all funded activities in the state. And in many cases, New York Best has been and can be helpful in helping you as a company identify those opportunities and pursue them. We've had a history of knowing funding agencies and the people that work there and have a pretty good understanding of what they're looking for. So we like the opportunity to work with you on those issues. Now, next we start talking about what's coming in 2013. And Bill, that's to you.
Thank you, John. So where the industry is heading in 2013, we started talking a little bit about the systems aspect in what I talked about in 2012, and we're seeing an increasing focus on systems for specific applications. We're really moving from cells used for just about everything to broader technologies and systems that are optimized. And part of the things that goes with that is we're seeing more of a staged value chain from battery manufacturers through system integrators, although certainly some companies are vertically integrated through that. Performance, life, and safety testing is moving to systems, not extrapolated from cells. So historically in the industry, you'd extrapolate a lot from individual cells. We're seeing much more interest in the testing and understanding of the full system. In the grid case, specific business cases that capture multiple value streams are becoming more important, and people are recognizing what's working in those areas and capitalizing on that. And fortunately, we're also seeing a recognition by the regulators to allow for the monetization of multiple value streams, and I think we'll see a lot more of that. We're seeing an interesting piece play out between mandates versus incentives versus encouragement. We just had the announcement yesterday of 50 megawatt purchase required by California PUC for SoCal Edison, and that's an important step in the industry. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out across the nation with regard to this balance of mandates, incentives, and encouragement that is being driven. We're also seeing major players getting into the industry. So we're seeing a much broader base of companies being involved in the electric grid industry, a lot of the traditional electric grid equipment providers getting involved in energy storage. And it's importantly, we're seeing across the industry, not just in the electric grid, continued differentiation of technologies for applications. So the use of different chemistries for the right applications and different types of storage beyond batteries for different applications, fuel cells, ultracapacitors, other devices that are right for particular applications, and seeing more differentiation in those regards. So we're now going to get into some of the particular aspects of what's going on in New York State and then the priorities of New York Best. So I'll pass it over to Denise for New York State.
Okay, thanks, Bill. So from a policy perspective for energy storage, we're really off to a good start in New York in 2013. Starting with the Governor's State of the State initiatives, which incorporated some new initiatives as well as many of the Commission recommendations. The Governor's New York Rising document really lays out some bold initiatives that will have a dramatic and positive impact on energy storage. The first is really what's called the Charge New York initiative, which is a $50 million initiative over 5 years which includes funding from New York Power Authority, NYSERDA, and tax credits to create a statewide network of 3,000 public and workplace charging stations. The second is a $1 billion Green Bank proposal, which is intended to leverage public funds to attract private investment for clean energy. And then another notable element in the Governor's State of the State is the creation of innovation hotspots. These are essentially tax-free zones that will promote clean tech innovation at incubators that currently exist or new incubators, and team our wonderful academic institutions with the private sector. So those were some of the key items specifically in the State of the State. Also included in the New York Rising document, the State of the State, were several of the recommendations coming out of the commissions established after Hurricane Sandy. And specifically, some of the recommendations that we wanted to highlight for the energy storage industry is an effort to, a recommendation to incentivize and promote the creation of power islands and microgrids, as well as the use of distributed generation. In addition, the Moreland Commission recommended abolishing the Long Island Power Authority and privatizing its operations. This is something obviously we'll be watching in 2013. And also the Moreland Commission recommended increasing the Public Service Commission's oversight authority with respect to our public utilities. Another very important outcome or recommendation that was included in the New York Rising document is a charge to PSC to analyze ways to monetize the value stream for distributed generation and energy storage. It specifically speaks to designing rate structures to reflect real-time energy costs, reducing mandatory hourly pricing thresholds, simplifying the interconnection process for energy storage systems, modifying standby charges to encourage energy storage and distributed generation. So this is a significant recommendation for our industry. Also, for 2013, NYBEST will continue to participate in the reauthorization of the Renewable Portfolio Standard. We will continue to weigh in and participate in the Energy Highway Blueprint implementation, as well as legislative initiatives as they arise with respect to energy storage. We've seen already bills in relation to a manufacturing tax credit for energy storage and other different tax credit incentives for this industry. So it's definitely going to be a very busy year for us on the policy front. And we'll talk a little bit before the end of the webinar about how you can participate in that process. Your voice is really important to us, and making sure that we're reflecting your concerns is something that we really want to make sure happens this year with so many different initiatives on the table. Okay, I'm handing to
me.
Bill.
So NYBEST Priorities for 2013. We'll talk about a couple of very high-level ones and then get into a little bit more detail. At the very highest level is really the implementation of the roadmap. The roadmap lays out the key goals and directions for our industry and guides our course going forward. Continuing to build on NYBEST successes and the success of our membership, we're gaining a lot of momentum. We're gaining increased recognition of energy storage as a pivotal part of the energy industry, and increased recognition of its value across the board in many different applications and the traction that we're getting. So continuing to build on that momentum. Our Commercialization Center is a key part of our plans for this year. We'll be completing agreements with private partners, and the building out of the center. We will be bidding the design. We've already done some initial work, but we'll be bidding the design services and the construction management services for that center, purchasing the equipment for the center, and launching the operations of the center this year. So it's an exciting time for the NYBEST Commercialization Center. And I'm going to now turn it to John to talk about some of the programs in a little more detail for NYBEST.
Great. Thank you, Bill. So as a member-based organization, one of our central priorities is to deliver high-quality services and to make sure that the things we do reflect your priorities as members. I've talked a bit about coaching services and some of the work we've done there. It's a significant part of how Bill and I spend our time, and we feel it's an extremely valuable way to spend our time. So it is something that we encourage you to take advantage of and to talk to us. The part about member connections here is also something we see as a key part of how we do business. We can facilitate those connections in ways that either directly at conferences where we bring people together face-to-face, through email introductions, which is also a pretty standard part of my day, and other means. We're happy to reach out and find people and potentially save you a lot of time in finding the right people or persons to talk to. So let me move into the website, some of the things we've done there. If you've been to the NYBEST website at www.ny-best.org, recently you'd noticed some significant changes and improvements. Things that are new to the website include blogs that Bill and I and occasional others write and post, where we kind of share our thoughts about ongoing activities and important issues of the day. The Member Spotlight is a new feature where we highlight a given company, and we'll be rotating and working our way through the membership to provide that capability to everyone who's a member. One of the things I skipped over here, and I certainly shouldn't, funding opportunities. We work very hard to identify both state and federal funding opportunities that can help move the technologies forward and companies. We also spend a fair amount of our time in contact with the funding agencies and the personnel there to help them understand what we think priorities are from you. And so there's a bit of a shaping of financial opportunities that is a part of what we do, and we certainly like to make sure we're asking for the right things. So it's good to have you let us know what works. Now, let's see, I'm going to move on. Next on the list here, supply chain and manufacturing project. This is actually a new focus area for us. It's something that has been embedded in what we do, but we're raising the level of focus around this for this year. The idea here is that there are many companies and organizations across the state who have the technologies and capabilities and expertise that could be of value to participants in the energy storage field. And our effort here will be to educate them and attract them into the fold, in a sense. Part of this will be an event we'll host in Rochester this fall, really a trade show, if you will, and where individuals and companies who have expertise and equipment and capabilities can showcase them, meet each other, and talk business. There's a huge opportunity in this area, and with the renewed emphasis at a national level on manufacturing, and certainly in the state, we think that the energy storage industry is very well positioned to take advantage of some of that momentum and to move us all forward. Next.
Okay.
Denise.
Back to me. Thanks. So as I mentioned earlier, we are going to have a very busy year. One of the things that we're doing this year is creating a government affairs working group, and it's our attempt at putting something in place that will more systematically get your input on specific issues that present the industry. So we've established a government affairs working group. Brian Pruce from AES Energy Storage is the chair of that working group. He serves on our board. Obviously, our goals are to advocate on behalf of the industry and weigh in on proposed legislation, regulation, new programs, and initiatives. So if you're interested in participating in this group, you need to be a New York Best member, and you can contact us at info@newyorkbest.org. We really do want your input. It's extremely important to us, and I hope that you'll sign up to work with us on this effort. Okay, I'm going to hand it. Oh, it's me. This is still me. I'm sorry. Oh, too many handoffs. So in an effort, obviously, as John was saying, one of the things that we pride ourselves on is our efforts to bring together members to inform you, to provide you with information, and to provide you with the ability to connect with your colleagues in this industry. So we have a series of events planned for this year, starting with our Capture the Energy Conference on March 6th and 7th in Troy, New York. This is our premier event. We have a tremendous lineup of speakers coming to this. We have the new energy czar for New York State, Richard Kaufman, who is kicking off the day in terms of providing a keynote address. Frank Murray, who's the president and CEO of NYSERDA, will be in attendance. Leisha Eves, who's the Deputy Secretary for Economic Development, will be providing a keynote on the second day. Gil Canones from New York Power Authority is also going to be providing a keynote. And we have a number of speakers from many different organizations. And of course, Frank Murray will be presenting as well as a keynote. So all of the high-level energy folks in the state of New York will be there. We have a wonderful lineup of industry as well. Throughout the rest of the year, you can see we have a lot planned. The AEC conference at the end of April. We have an energy storage track that New York Best has sponsored. We have a conference planned in June in New York City, a trade show in the fall in Rochester, our investment conference, which is a very popular event coming up in October, and then a technology conference in November. And we will be doing 5 more webinars this year. With respect to webinars, I do just want to say we have an opportunity at the end of this webinar to provide any ideas or suggestions for future topics, and we welcome your input on other webinar topics that you'd like to hear about. And now I'm going to hand it to John.
Thanks, Denise. There are quite a few handoffs here. We're pretty good at them, though. I'm going to do a quick summary of the membership benefits, things that we've talked about already pretty extensively on this call, so I won't spend a lot of time on this. But clearly, one of the key things, the key takeaway here is this is a great place to meet others in the industry, to understand and talk about common concerns, and to make sure that our voice as a group and your voice as an individual can be joined together and really help move the ball, move the technology forward, help shape markets, help shape regulations. We think there are real opportunities in the sector, and the things that you see here are all ways that we reach out and try to make that happen. The idea that we're all collectively a stronger voice than any of us individually really is quite true, and our opportunity is very significant. Now I'm going to move to discussion on providing all of these benefits requires resources, and we have the great benefit through the support that we receive from New York State and from some industry sponsorship that we're able to keep our dues at a reasonable level. This year, for the first time, you see 3 categories of dues. Corporate members at $1,500 per year, academic, nonprofit, and government organizations receive a discount at $1,000 a year, and startup companies at $500 a year, given the resources are scarce, and we certainly want to be inclusive of startup concerns in what we do.
Okay, so we're just about at the end. So I do want to just remind folks, if you haven't already, to take a minute to check out the program for Capture the Energy and to register for it. We are expecting a big crowd. We have a number of sponsors. On the industry side, I mentioned before some of the high-level state employees that will be there, state officials that will be there, but we also have representatives and senior execs from General Electric, Samsung, Toshiba, Corning, National Grid, Con Ed, you name it. Everybody that's involved in batteries in New York State is going to be at this conference, so batteries and energy storage. So I really hope that you will join us. And so next, we're going to just move into our Q&A. We do have about 10 minutes to cover questions. And we also want to remind people not to get off the call until you take the survey. So we do have a few questions that have come in, and I'm going to be our little moderator here for questions. So let's see. What's the specific question with regard to how do we make suggestions for policy? So what's the input for how we make suggestions for policy? Do you want to take that, Bill?
Sure. So a question about how people make suggestions and get involved in that regard. The Government Affairs Working Group that NYBEST is setting up is a great example of that. If you are interested in participating in that, if you reach out and contact us, you can contact us through info@NYBEST or email any of us directly. We'd love to get you involved in the group. If you don't want to necessarily sit on the group but just want to make suggestions, we certainly would encourage you to reach out directly to any one of us in email or by phone.
Okay. So with respect to, so we have a question relating to natural gas. How does natural gas development help or hurt energy storage? I'll give that one to you, Bill.
Yeah, it's really a fascinating question, and I was actually on a panel last week with some of our members where a similar question got asked, and one of the members who was developing energy storage for behind the meter for buildings in New York City pointed out that in that application, really it's all about reliability. The price of natural gas doesn't directly impact at all. But on so for some aspects of the energy storage industry, it doesn't impact. But for aspects on the grid, it can impact, and it can impact in two different directions. Interestingly, right now, our electricity grid is balanced by two groups. It's balanced by natural gas generators and by energy storage and similar technologies. So for frequency regulation in New York State, the price of natural gas can reduce the price of services for frequency regulation. But as the price of natural gas comes down, because natural gas is the balancer and is the incremental resource on the grid, frequently those power plants are under capacity compared to other types of power plants, nuclear, coal, etc. You'd really like a situation as natural gas prices come down where you use the capacity of your natural gas plants and you move that balancing resource to energy storage instead of having natural gas plants sit idle in order to balance later. Likewise, as you start to move that resource to natural gas, you also continue to drive the needs for local load reductions and peak load reductions in the congested areas. So, from my perspective, reduction in natural gas actually is not a negative for the energy storage industry. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, but in fact could be a positive.
Okay. So we have a question regarding mechanical storage technologies. And Bill, I'm going to direct this one to you too. Comment on the status of mechanical storage technologies, flywheels in energy storage. Is it actually in practice or is it R&D?
So certainly mechanical storage technologies are in practice. As I mentioned, the Beacon plant here, it's only about 30 miles from where we're sitting right now, has been up for quite a while. And in fact, they have another facility that's been up even longer. Flywheels are being used for grid frequency regulation today. They're being used in a few different applications as well, and so that technology is certainly continuing. There are, I think the question is illustrative of the fact that there are a lot of different technologies in the energy storage sector, and these technologies really have unique attributes. And I think what we're going to see over the next couple of years is kind of the matching of those attributes for the various different market requirements in a more full way that's going to bring forward a number of these different technologies.
Great. Okay, we have about 3 different questions that deal with funding. So I'm going to direct these to you, John, and we'll do our best.
All right.
So the first one is, how does New York Best help realize multiple revenue streams? And then the second one is, can startups from other states get funding? And then the third one is, are there any thermal energy storage specific programs available? So they're sort of all under the funding, and I thought I would group them together.
Yeah. The first one's a little bit different in that I think we're talking there about revenue streams that come into energy storage installations and devices. And certainly the work that we do with the Public Service Commission, with the New York ISO, and related entities, we're working hard to try to understand what the current state of play is for all types of devices in all locations, and then to systematically knock down the barriers and really put in place policies that will allow those devices to realize revenue. So that's squarely in the purview of this the Government Affairs Working Group that Denise talked about, and so we'd love to have you engaged in that. The second question about startups from other states. In general, New York State funding requires New York State content or location, and in many ways, the more New York-centric, the better. But I will say that numerous programs have been run with companies that are from outside of New York receiving funding, as long as the benefits accrue here and that the benefits would be made available to New York State ratepayers. It's certainly a viable thing. We want to attract good technologies and good teams to do work here and to participate with companies within the state in terms of supply chain or partnering, sometimes location for a demonstration, that kind of thing. So that certainly is an opportunity that's on the table. And I did pretty well. What was the third question?
Thermal.
Thermal storage. There are numerous programs at NYSERDA that would allow funding, or that would postulate funding for thermal storage, and certainly NYSERDA has done numerous thermal storage types of devices in the past. We have a number of companies related to thermal storage in the New York Best fold and in our membership, and so there are certainly opportunities out there for thermal devices.
And contact John directly.
Yeah, I'm happy to talk more.
Okay, so we have I think time for one more, and I think I'll put this one to you, Bill. How viable and what growth do you see for microgrids? Are utility companies supportive, or are the islanding concerns too formidable?
That's a great question, and I think one of the big sea changes in thinking that's come out of Superstorm Sandy is that islanding has gone from a bad thing to a good thing. In that, it used to be that islanding was considered a bad thing, that it was considered dangerous, that you could have if something was up when the rest of the power was down, that was bad because of safety concerns to line workers, etc. And obviously, you have to deal with the safety concerns. But I think the recognition now, when you went around the New York City area and looked at solar panels on top of buildings and the buildings still being black, we got people thinking of, geez, we really should allow islanding, and we should find ways to make islanding effective and safe. And that change is not just to people that are doing solar energy storage. I think that change is really a change in thinking that goes to the utilities and to the government and to the regulators. Obviously, it has to be done right. But it's a major recommendation out of the commission reports is to a phrase that actually John was involved in putting a lot of the background of this to, coming up with power islands, areas that would be up microgrids. In other words, a microgrid in this means can be just a single building or it can be something bigger. There's a lot of work to figure out how those are actually incorporated in the grid. There's demonstration projects going on, but personally I believe that's an area of great opportunity and certainly an area that we're seeing a lot of enthusiasm around seeing promotion of, and I'm quite confident that New York State will find ways to promote those developments.
Okay, so we're at exactly 2 o'clock, and we want to thank you all for participating in this webinar. As I mentioned before, we have a survey on the next slide, so please, it's a short survey, it won't take a lot of time, and your feedback's important to us. Again, we appreciate your participation. Please join us at Capture the Energy on March 6th and 7th, and thanks again. Have a good day.
Thank you. Please stand by.